Nell Barrow was 10 years old the morning she opened the wire gate and let the milking herd into her family's standing corn. She did not sneak. She lifted the latch loop off the post, swung the gate wide, and stood beside it in her bib overalls while the cows poured through. Her red-brown farm dogs sat at her boot and watched them go. The Holsteins waded in belly deep and began to eat green leaves, whole young stalks, 20 acres of the only decent corn on the road, a month before tassel. The first truck stopped within minutes. Gary Voss left his engine running and stood on the shoulder with his cap pushed back. 2 more trucks pulled in behind him. Nobody got out to chase the cows. They got out to watch a little girl hold a gate open while a crop destroyed itself and to decide what it meant. What it meant seemed plain enough. It was the driest June the county could remember. The pasture had bleached to straw, and the ground had cracked open in the lanes. Her grandfather Earl had been buried in April, and the whole township knew that girl had followed the old man everywhere. Voss said it out loud so the others could nod. Grief does strange things. Somebody get Roy. Her father came off the far field at a dead run. Roy Barrow had lost his father in April and half his pasture by June, and now his daughter stood at an open gate feeding his grain crop to his cows. He grabbed the gate. He looked at the herd, already deep in the rows, and then at Nell, who had not moved and did not cry. She said one thing. Grandpa's notebook. Kitchen table. I marked the page. Here is what nobody on that shoulder asked. Corn makes its grain in one narrow window. The plant can look green and tall all summer, but if it runs out of water in the week it silks and pollinates, the ear fills with nothing. A field can fail in 7 days and spend the next 2 months pretending it didn't. Every farmer on that road knew this in a general way. Earl Barrow had known it in a particular way, and he had written the particulars down for 40 years. The notebook lived on the kitchen table because Nell had put it there 3 days earlier. Earl had kept a page for every season. Rainfall, first cutting, when the pond dropped, what the subsoil held going into July. And for the last 6 years he had kept probe readings. The old man had bought soil moisture probes and buried them at 2 depths in the corn ground. One sat shallow, where the young roots drink. One sat deep, where a crop survives a dry spell or doesn't. He taught his granddaughter to read them the same summer he taught her to ride a bike. It was their evening chore. Walk the field edge, pull the numbers, write them in pencil. He never called it teaching. He called it checking on the water, and he let her carry the notebook home. Nell had kept walking the field after the funeral. She kept writing the numbers because stopping felt worse. And the numbers had gone wrong in a slow, patient, unmistakable line. The shallow reading had been dropping since May. That was normal. The deep reading was the one that mattered. In the second week of June, it fell below a figure Earl had underlined twice, years before, with a note in his blunt pencil. Below this before tassel, the crop will not fill. Feed it or lose it, not a riddle. A choice with a clock on it. Corn that dies of drought in August is worth almost nothing. It stands there hollow, fit for salvage at whatever an insurance adjuster shrugs at. But the same plants eaten green in June are feed, real feed, at the exact moment the pasture is quit. A dairy cow does not stop needing to eat because the sky stops raining. The herd was the family's whole living. The corn was only ever going to become milk one of 2 ways, through the bin or through the cow. The deep probe said the bin was already a lie. She had tried to explain it once, 4 days before she opened the gate. Her father was on the phone with the bank and waved her off, gentle, distracted, the 5th time that week. Grief had made him busy. So she did the arithmetic a 10-year-old does. Telling had failed. Showing was left. Roy Barrow stood at that gate for a long minute while his neighbors watched from the road. Then he did the thing that made the story worth telling. He left the gate open, walked to the house, and read the marked page. He read the underlined figure and the June column beside it, 6 years of Junes, and this June sitting at the bottom of the list like a confession. Then he came back out and moved the cows off the corn. Not out of it, off the most of it, because his daughter had been right about the water and wrong about one danger, and the notebook caught that too. Drought-stressed corn pulls nitrogen up from the soil faster than it can use it, and the excess piles up as nitrate in the lower stalk. Cattle that gorge on it can sicken and go down. Earl's rule was written in the margin. Fence it in strips, a day at a time, and leave the bottom third of the stalk standing. Roy strung a single electric wire that afternoon. He gave the herd one narrow band of corn, high grazing only, and moved the wire each morning after. The dog learned the new routine in a day. Nell walked the wire with her father at first light, before the bus came. To the road, the strip wire made it all look worse. Deliberate, now, organized, the Barrows were rationing their own catastrophe. The co-op posted the canceled grain contract with the penalty beside it, and men Nell had known her whole life stopped waving at the school bus. At the diner, the word settled in and stayed. The girl had done something to that family. Roy heard it and said nothing, because the only answer he had was a pencil figure, and pencil figures don't argue well in July. The wire moved every morning. The cows milked on. In the second week of July, Roy drilled forage turnips straight into the grazed strips, into trampled stalks and manure, without plowing anything. That finished it for the diner. Turnips, in a drought, in a wrecked cornfield, planting a garden for cows while serious men prayed over grain. But the seed went where the herd had already spread its own fertilizer. Turnips sown in high summer make their crop in about 90 days, on less water than corn asks. They come ready right as the fall feed gap opens, when pasture is done and hay is gold. It was the second half of the same plan, in the same handwriting. August answered first. The corn that everyone else had left standing did exactly what the deep probe said it would. It tasseled into dead air, silked with nothing to drink, and burned from the bottom leaf up, whole fields the color of paper. The adjusters came in dusty sedans and wrote salvage figures that would not cover the seed. Voss chopped his failed crop for what little feed was in it. He bought hay at drought prices, hauled in from 3 counties away, and he was one of the lucky ones. On the Barrow place, the milk truck kept coming up the lane. The grazed strips had even pushed up ragged new green from the lowest joints. Thin stuff, nothing like a crop. But the cows walked out each morning and ate. The talk did not turn around all at once. Talk never does. It turned in pieces, at the pace of other people's arithmetic. It turned when the hay bills came due in September, and men who had laughed in June sat at their kitchen tables with a pencil and did not laugh. It turned in October, when the Barrow herd went on to turnips, tops and bulbs both, and the tank stayed full while other barns dried cows off early to save feed. By Christmas, Roy had not bought one bale. Nell walked the field edge every evening with the dog and pulled the probe numbers and wrote them in her own pencil under her grandfather's. The co-op held its winter meeting in the Grange Hall in January. The elevator manager, Dale Kessler, had posted the Barrow penalty on his own board in June. He was also a man who could read a ledger, and he had spent the fall reading this one from the outside. He called Roy the week before the meeting. "Bring the notebook," he said, "and bring your daughter." She stood on a folding chair so the back rows could see her. She wore the same overalls she had worn at the gate. She was not scared, or not much, because it was only the evening chore said out loud. "Grandpa buried 2 probes," she told them. "The shallow one tells you about this week. The deep one tells you about August." She read them the June column, year by year, and then the underlined rule: feed it or lose it. She explained the strip wire and the nitrate in the low stalk, and why the cows never got the bottom third. Some of the men wrote things down. Kessler asked her what the deep probe had read on the morning she opened the gate. She told him the number was on the marked page. She said she had checked it 3 mornings running before she touched the latch. Grandpa said never act on one reading, she said. Weather lies for a day. It doesn't lie for a week. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then old Amos Deal, who had farmed through droughts these men only knew as stories, stood up in the back. He did not ask whether she had been right. August had answered that. How early did you know? He asked. Nell thought about it honestly. Middle of June, she said. Grandpa knew 6 years ago. He just needed somebody to keep reading. That spring the proof finished itself, quietly, in the dirt. The sacrificed field had spent the winter under trampled stalks and manure, the residue holding what moisture came. The ground shaded and fed instead of bare and baked. Where the turnips had rotted in, the soil worked up dark and loose. Roy planted it last, because it needed him least. By late May, it was the only field on the road that had come up even. A flat green sheet from fence to fence. The men who drove past it slowed down for a different reason than they had slowed the June before. Voss stopped his truck at the Barrow Lane one evening and rolled the window down. Nell was at the field edge with the dog, pulling numbers. He looked at the corn for a while. Your grandpa's probes, he said. Where would a man buy those? She wrote her last figure, closed the notebook, and told him. Behind her the gate stood latched, the same wire gate, and the field it held was green.